Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Tell me your name and date of birth, please.
Howell Emanuel, Donaldson III, 01/26/93.
All right. Can you read and write and understand English?
I can.
I have your plea form in front of me as well as a DNA inquiry form. Talk to the state, but no one told us to have Zoom arrangements, so I don't, unless you all want to set something up with your own computers.
That's fine, Judge. We'll whatever you proceed.
All right.
Excuse me, Your Honor, the interpreters are having difficulty
DNA
hearing.
form that are signed by you and most of your attorneys. Did you go over and discuss each of those forms with your attorneys? And did specifically in the plea form, did you read each of the 3 pages on that plea form?
I did.
And did you understand each and every one of those paragraphs that explain the rights that you have and the rights that you waive when you enter this plea today?
I do.
You're charged with 4 counts of murder in the first degree. Each of those have a maximum sentence of life or death. The state has noticed you with an intent to seek the death penalty on each of those cases. Each of those cases also carries a 4-year minimum mandatory. Are you aware of the charges against you?
I'm sorry, Judge, it's a 25-year minimum mandatory.
What did I say?
A 4-year.
With 25-year minimum mandatory. Are you aware of that? And do you understand the nature of each of those charges?
I do.
Did you hear everything that your attorney told me in preparation of this plea about the discovery process and what you all have gone through in preparation of this case when we first started here today? About the number of pages of discovery, the numbers of depots that have been done, all of that. Did you hear all that?
I did.
And have you discussed all of those matters with your attorneys?
Well, we did.
To each of those charges that I've just described, how do you plead today?
Guilty.
Are you pleading guilty because you believe it's in your best interest to do that?
I do.
Are you doing so freely and voluntarily?
I am.
Is anyone threatening you, coercing you, pressuring you in any way to get you to do so?
No.
Are you under the influence of drugs, alcohol, or taking any sort of medication at this time?
No.
And do you have any mental health issues that affect your ability to understand me or understand the significance of what you're doing here, or have impacted any of your discussions with your attorneys about this case?
No.
Your attorney represented that you are not taking medication at this time, but you have in the past. Is that right?
Briefly.
Briefly, you took medication?
While I've been in jail, yes.
Is the fact that you're not taking it now, does that affect your ability to understand me or to understand what we're doing here today, or cause you any confusion at all about what you're doing?
No.
Do you understand that if you enter this plea today, you give up or waive your right to have a jury trial?
I do.
That means your right to have a jury decide both in the first phase of your case whether you're guilty or innocent, and in the second phase, need be to determine whether or not you deserve the death penalty. Do you understand that?
I do.
That means the right to be represented by an attorney, and you clearly are represented by attorneys in this case, to have the state prove each of these counts against you beyond a reasonable doubt. The right that you have to present a defense to a jury, call witnesses in your own defense. The right that you have to confront witnesses and cross-examine them. And the right to have the state, again, prove this case against you beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand all of those rights you waive?
I do.
You also waive your right to appeal any issues relating to this case. enter this plea. That means specifically you can't be sitting in prison and deciding, oh, we should have gone ahead with that motion to suppress, or I really wanted to appeal the judge's last decision about whatever. You can't do any of that when you enter this plea. This plea is final, in other words. Do you understand that?
I do.
And do you understand that you're entering this plea in avoidance of the state seeking the death penalty on each of those cases?
I do.
As I've said, your attorney has discussed with us what has been done in this case discovery-wise, but is there any witness that you've asked your attorneys to seek out and find to call on your behalf? Any work to be done, any motions to be filed, anything left that you think that should be done in preparation of this case that you've asked them to do that they haven't done, or that you haven't even asked them yet but you think should be done before you enter this plea?
No.
Are you satisfied with the services of your attorneys?
I am.
And you understand that this plea agreement calls for consecutive life sentences. Do you understand that?
Understand.
And by consecutive, that means one followed by the other, followed by the other, followed by the other. You understand that?
Understand.
So in reality, as we stand here today, there's no way that you're leaving the Florida State Prison. Do you understand that?
Understand.
Any questions about that whatsoever?
No.
And finally, you're entering this plea of your own free will, is that correct?
Yes.
Any questions about that?
No.
Have you also had the opportunity to discuss this with your parents, who I know have been involved in your case?
I have.
Right. And do you need any more time to have any discussions with anyone about this choice you're making here today?
No.
All right, I do find a factual basis for the plea. I find the plea is freely, knowingly, voluntarily entered. I'll accept the plea and accept the negotiation with the state. Do witnesses want to be heard after imposition of sentence?
Yes, ma'am, it's my understanding that there are several witnesses. We would ask that once you sentence Mr. Donaldson, that we be allowed to move to the other table to allow the family members to
Sure.
sit where we are.
Pursuant to the plea agreement with the state, I'll accept that plea agreement. Sentence you as follows. Count 1. That's the count involving Benjamin Mitchell. You're adjudicated guilty, sentenced to life in the Florida State Prison. That is with a 25-year minimum mandatory. As to count 2, which is Ms. Hoffa, that you are adjudicated guilty, sentenced to life in the Florida State Prison with a 25-year minimum mandatory. That's consecutive to count 1. Count 3, the count relating to Mr. Naiboa, you're adjudicated guilty, sentenced to life in the Florida State Prison with a 25-year minimum mandatory, consecutive to count 2. Count 4, the count involving Mr. Felton, you're adjudicated guilty, sentenced to life in the Florida State Prison with a 25-year minimum mandatory. That's consecutive to count 3. Impose all mandatory costs in the case as a lien. Is the state asking for any additional costs regarding restitution or anything?
No, Your Honor.
All right. You have credit at this time for 1,981 days. Is that correct, your understanding of your credit time, sir?
Yes.
You have 30 days to appeal the legality of this negotiated plea and sentence.
Thank you.
Thank you.